Wasn't that TV show?
Hello, friends, and welcome to Innsmouth in the festival season, no less. I'm one of your guides, Rob Poyton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yeah, it's a wild and chilly day here in Innsmouth today, isn't it? It's
absolutely freezing, isn't it? That sea breeze cuts you in half, doesn't it? I have to say.
It's mad. Yeah, and there's all some strange, furtive folk around the town, around the streets. It's it's not the sort of place you want to be out on a cold winter night. I'm telling you.
No, and you can tell it's cold because you can see all those people out there. They're all wrapped up nice and warm in those big sort of cowls and hooded robes, aren't they? I guess they're wearing those, and their hands are hidden in their sleeves. So, yeah.
Hey, you can't beat them, join them.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely, yes. Yes, I haven't. My robe's at the cleaners, actually. I did wear my robe last time.
Well, I thought the disguise might be useful in case I need to pop down the general store later, you know. Get some booze for Zadok Allen, you know.
What is it then? Is it a 7-Eleven or a Budgeons or
Budgeons?
Innsmouth Budgeons. Imagine getting
Budgeons. Oh.
Yeah. But that was in the story, wasn't it? Didn't the guy in the grocery store? He just got the short straw, and you're working in Innsmouth kind of thing.
First Western or something it's called. It's interesting because it actually features in, the video game Dark Corners of the Earth.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
It features in there, doesn't it? You can actually go in there and it's a little puzzle with a safe, which I found incredibly annoying.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that game was, or some of it was incredibly annoying, but it really
so good. Yeah.
Pulled me in. It really, I mean, I spent, I don't know, must have been weeks trying to work through that.
Trying to get through the Innsmouth chase scene for it by any chance.
Yes. Yeah, that was.
I died on that so many times.
Yeah. But that was tense, wasn't it? That's one of the. I think that's the tensest scene I've ever had in a computer game. That was,
yeah.
And I don't know if there's anything new coming out at the moment. I know we've had the new Call of Cthulhu, but that was a couple of years ago now, wasn't it?
We've got the remake of Alone in the Dark.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, yes. And we've also got the remake of Sherlock Holmes: The Awakened.
Ah, right.
Yeah, the Cthulhu mashup thing on that. I'm excited about both them. Alone in the Dark's out. I think it's out on New Year's Day.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to have to buy a new console because it's only running on new next-gen consoles, and I haven't got
Is it the Xbox? Is it the Xbox 360? Series X. Yeah. Oh, and we've got our first message in. So, folks, please do feel free to message us. It's from Dawn Keat.
Good evening, Dawn.
Good evening, Tim and Rob. I hope you're both well. Are you ready for Christmas? Wow.
As ready as I'll ever be. I spent the last week, my brain is completely mangled with Christmas because obviously I do the weekly radio show and the next episode goes out on Christmas Eve. So I had to do a Christmas special. So I spent, I've done more research than that for this than I've done for like my last 3 stories.
Oh, really?
Researching goth Christmas songs.
Oh, of course. Wow. Now there's a genre I never thought of.
It's interesting. There's actually some really good ones. There's also some terrible stuff as well, but they sort of go from the sublime to the ridiculous. So it's got a good mix. I've also thrown in a few H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society
brilliant
numbers in there. Like Freddy the Red-Brained Migo has got in there, and I saw Mummy kissing Yog-Sothoth.
I put a link up to 1 or 2 of those in Innsmouth News this issue.
Awesome.
So they are great. That that's amazing. Yeah.
I love their stuff. So good.
Yeah.
I've got my Cthulhu tree on top of the tree as well. Little knitted Cthulhu. Somebody knitted for me years ago.
Nice. Well, I have to say we got ours. We've got no decorations up. We're actually going to be possibly away over Christmas, so we haven't put anything up this year. But we do still have all our bats and stuff hanging up from Halloween. So.
I still have my bats and things from 2 Halloweens ago when I first moved into this flat. Still, they go up and never come down.
It's Halloween all year round here.
Yeah, my flat guy looks like the Electric Ballroom circa 1982. You know.
Yeah, I remember when I used to go Alice in Wonderland, which was at Gossips in Dean Street, which was a sort of a psychedelic club. But I think that's where the Batcave was as well. I
Yeah,
think
the
it was the
Batcave.
same.
Yeah.
And they used to decorate, or we used to hang tissue paper from the ceilings
and silly string
of all sorts.
Inflatable bananas. Why inflatable bananas?
And Dawn has asked, goth Christmas songs. Can you name one? Well, Tim's the man to ask, because I can't think of any.
Oh, there's loads. Dead Artist Syndrome did a song called Christmas. There's a lot of covers. There's a lot of covers done. Actually, the best one, in my humble opinion, is Alien Sex Fiends Stuff the Turkey.
Right.
It's got the immortal line, have you ever wondered why Santa's cheeks are rosy red? He's not jolly, he's just off his head.
Nice. Poetry, mate. Poetry.
Exactly.
And I think that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of the season, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I have to say, I do. I can think of a few sort of horror ones. I mean, there was the Monster Mash, that album.
There's Transylvania Christmas on that one.
Yeah. There was a few on there, I remember. But I suppose, well, they sort of count as goth, don't they?
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah.
There's quite a few psychobilly ones, actually. Reverend Horton Heat did an entire album of Christmas songs, which were all daft. Yeah. I've put one of them in the show, actually. Santa on the Roof. Hey, Daddy, did you see Santa on the roof? Because I saw you just come down the ladder, you know.
Marvelous stuff. Well, as I say, I think I'm ready for Christmas. I found, well, I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? We all moan about Amazon and that kind of stuff, but I have to say, it does make Christmas shopping a lot easier, especially if you're looking for more or less mainstream stuff. You know, obviously you can get all the books we like on there and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's one of them things, isn't it? I see it as a kind of necessary evil.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually made the mistake of going into town the other day, and I realised why I don't do that anymore.
Did you get jostled by strange sailors?
Oh. Christmas shopping in Innsmouth. Yeah, there you go.
Did you feel the press of strangely soft but pulpy bodies?
Pulpy bodies. I listened through to the damn thing the other day again. The pulpy bodies thing always gets me. I don't know why. It just makes me sort of shudder.
It is, isn't it? And Dawn says, Merry Christmas to you both. I wish you both a great time at Christmas and be merry. Thanks very much, Dawn. And cheers, to you also. I hope you have a lovely time. So what else have we got? We've got some questions come in as well. In fact, there was one that we're going to put in Dagon's sack that we're going to look at. And we've just had another question. Oh, John Harvey. Hi, John. Hello to both of you. I really enjoyed the episode on Lord of the Rings. Interesting to think of connections to folk horror. Something very folk horror-ish about the old forest. Absolutely. And I don't know. I do sort of quite often take a look at the folk horror forums and groups on Facebook. And I don't see a lot of Tolkien mentioned on there. Yet, when you think about it, there's quite a few elements of folk horror in his work.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say definitely. I mean, even all the stuff with the Ents and things like that. I mean, it's almost like the Leshen, isn't it? You know?
Yes. Yeah.
And things like that, boggarts and all that kind of tree folklore stuff.
Yeah. And even the idea that the hobbits gradually sort of fade and become the sort of little people, don't they? You know, they almost sort of turn into your leprechauns or your gnomes and that kind of thing.
Your Macon-esque little people in the hills kind of thing. It's I mean, Smeagol could be one of them, really, if you think about it.
Yeah. Or the worms of the earth, right?
Worms, exactly.
It fit into that. So I always think it's interesting how these different authors take the same idea and treat it in such different ways. You know, I mean, we know that hobbits can be quite hardy and ferocious, but they're not nasty creatures, are they? Where the worms of the earth or that kind of side of things, or Macken's little people, they're going to sacrifice you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sacrifice you to Pan or something. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, did we mention the wind in the willows? I think we did in that
briefly,
episode
I think.
as well.
Yeah, Piper at the Gates of Dawn and all that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we did, because I went down a Pink Floyd rabbit hole in my head.
I want
Astronomy
to tell
Domini.
you a story about a little man. Yeah, well, Sid was well into all that sort of stuff, wasn't he?
He was, wasn't he? Blimey.
Yeah, and actually one of his favourite poets, I think, was John Clare, who was a very sort of rural poet,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of that imagery in his work. Yeah.
I keep meaning next time I go to Cambridge, I'm going to do the Barrett and Floyd tour, I think.
Yeah. I've never. I mean, I lived just outside Cambridge for a couple of years and was in and around Cambridge a lot. And I don't know. I never went to look at the house. I must have been past it because it's on one of the quite main roads, Yeah. But I never consciously went to look for it. Really.
Yeah, but last time I was up there, when I went to see Robert Lloyd Parry, I was talking to the other half, and I was like, we should go to Grantchester Meadow. Take a copy of Ummagumma.
Sit by the riverbank.
Exactly.
There's quite a few ghost stories in that area as well, which I keep meaning to do an Innsmouth excursion. And you've got there's said to be a tunnel, I think, was it Rupert Brooke's house, or from one of those places. And then right nearby that, of course, you've got the Gog Magog Hills as well. So there's another folk horror site. And there's a ghostly legend there about a headless knight, I think, who once a year comes out of the hill and chases you around, or whatever headless knights do.
There's one of them up here. I can't remember the name of the hill now. But there's a barrow, and there's supposed to be a barrow white, which I thought was quite interesting.
Nice.
Yeah. And again, it's supposed to be like a long dead king that's supposed to rise and take revenge on anybody with Viking blood or something. I don't know.
Wow. So again, that ties exactly in with John's question there,
Exactly,
that folk horror. And I'm sure there's old standing stones. Well, of course there is. There's the is it the Stone of Erech? Well, I think that's the Black Stone, where Aragorn goes to meet with the army of the dead, and or he summons them. And again, there's a lot of standing stones and all that kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, and standing stones and fell stones and stuff. There's sort of a thread through everything. I mean, you get them in the fantasy, you even get them in sci-fi. Because I mean, I read, the TV from the 70s, the Quatermass, the fourth Quatermass.
Oh yes, yeah.
Which I thought was seriously underrated. I had the novelization. I read the novelization of it, and that was all about standing stones.
Yeah,
I was like, yeah.
I've not seen that yet. I've often read about it and everything else, but I do have that lined up. And I think especially when that came out, you had that whole Chariots of the Gods thing going on, didn't you? And standing stones and UFO connection, and was it Warminster where there was all the UFO sightings and people would go up on the hill? So a lot of it, as we say, you can draw so many connections between all these different, apparently separate genres and writers and paranormal events. It's interesting,
definitely. Yeah.
And I think the day was you've got the Dagon sack there, haven't you? Was the question there about the Lord of the Rings episode as well?
Indeed, there was a question from Lynn in Edinburgh. It says, really enjoyed the Tolkien episode. I was interested to hear a discussion on Lord of the Rings from this perspective. Do we know if there was any connection or contact between Tolkien and Lovecraft? What do we think? Did Tolkien ever read HPL?
Well, the answer is possibly, because in the 60s, I think it was 1964, L. Sprague de Camp sent Tolkien a copy of his anthology, Sword and Sorcery, which had a number of stories in it. I think Robert E. Howard and a few other people. And The Doom That Came to Sarnath, Lovecraft story, was in that, which I don't know about you, if I'd expect to see that in a Sword and Sorcery anthology necessarily.
No. That seems a strange one for me.
Yeah, because there's no hero in it, is there? There's not that conventional sort of sword and sorcery setup there's no sword fights.
Yeah, there's no swords and very little sorcery. It's just one of his Dunsany pastiches, really, isn't it? It's
yeah. So Tolkien possibly read that story, and he did write back to camp, and apparently his review or his opinion of the book was fairly lukewarm. So that's the only known connection we have where Tolkien may have read Lovecraft. If he did, in Lovecraft's defense, it's not really one of his finest stories, and it's certainly not a strong mythos tale in that sense, is it?
No, it's not. Like I say, it's one of his mood pieces more than anything, isn't it? There was quite a few of them as part of that cycle. Like what's the name of it now? Cellarface and things like that.
Yeah. I don't know if Sarnath is counted as one of the Dreamlands cycle, is it, or is it part of the? Does it tie in with the Dreamlands later on in? Maybe
it's mentioned. It's
Dream
a part.
Quest.
I think it's mentioned in Dream Quest, isn't it?
Yeah. Aside from that, I mean, other people have pointed to. Well, really, there's three things in Lord of the Rings that people point to. The most Lovecraftian thing, I would say, is when Gandalf's recounting his fight with the Balrog when he returns as Gandalf the White. And as you know, if you read the book, seen the film, etc., they plunge down Khazad-dûm into the depths below. And we get this line, far, far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things, which is a great line. And I think, as we said in that episode, I don't think Tolkien always gets the credit he deserves as a horror writer.
No,
and just the words, the deepest delvings of the dwarves. He liked his alliteration.
But then that to me reads very Machen-esque more so than Lovecraftian. Because obviously Machen, obviously it's Wales, so it's all mines and limestone caverns and all that kind of business. And
Yes, I agree. I mean, the other thing we have in that, or in the Moria section, is the Watcher in the Water, and I think certainly in the Bakshi film we have. So people see tentacles and think Lovecraft, right? So, but I think that's more like a sort of kraken or an octopoid type creature.
Yeah,
there's nothing to suggest it's anything from another world or that kind of stuff.
Again, though, the name is incredibly Lovecraftian. That could be the name of a Lovecraft story. The Watcher in the Water, the Haunter of the Dark.
Or certainly a Derleth story, eh?
Oh, definitely Derleth. I'm surprised he didn't do it. Yeah.
The Whistler in the Cellar, the Lurker in the Shed.
The Lurker in the Shed. That's amazing. There's one for the Nookie too.
There's one for the Nookie. Yes, the Lurker in the Shed. Yeah. I think there's a little thing for our listeners. Send us in your... What's your best title along those lines? There's two you can start. Whistler in the Cellar, Lurker in the Shed. Send us in some of your ideas as well. Perhaps we'll do a Derlethian a spoof on one of those. That might be another.
The Dweller in the Outhouse.
And then the third thing that people sometimes point to is, I mentioned the Stone of Eric earlier in the Army of the Dead, where they first go into the Paths of the Dead, which is this series of caves. And Gimli is at the back of the queue, and he gets this sense of the dead following in pitch blackness, just this evil presence. And there's a sort of line about him losing his mind, losing his sanity, which people say, well, that's quite a Lovecraftian thing. And you think, yeah, but then he's being followed by ghosts. Again, that's not really a Lovecraftian concept. No. And I mean, that's something we see in MRJ and all the rest. Yeah. People lose it, don't they? I mean, Michael Horden ended up sucking his thumb, right?
Yeah.
But a bed sheet.
So, a bed sheet, yeah.
So, yeah, that's my personal view is I don't think there's any direct connection. No. John DeLaughter did a very good article on this, which I'll see if I can find the link and put that up to. He goes into much more detail talking about this because I think at the end of the day Tolkien was a deeply religious man and HPL was a deeply non-religious man. So but interesting question anyway, I think so. Yes, thanks for that.
Yeah, I think apart from that, obviously you got the Shelob could definitely be something to do with that, like Natcher, couldn't it?
Oh yes,
You know,
yes,
because
yes,
it's
and
like one of the Grey Weavers, isn't it? You know, it's
yeah, yeah, and Ungoliant was the sort of parent, was it?
yeah,
Was Shelob the offspring of Ungoliant? I think
I
she
think
must have
so.
been.
Yeah,
Yeah, so she was almost Ungoliant was almost a god-like creature, wasn't it?
yeah,
It was, you know.
yeah. Very
Yeah,
similar to Smith's Atlas Natcher. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We had another question in as well. This is from Joe in Illinois. And we've spoken a little bit about the Cabinet of Curiosities. We've mentioned it
Oh
in
yeah,
passing.
yeah.
And Joe has asked if they do a second series of Cabinet of Curiosities, what adaptations would you like to see?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm,
Well, considering they did Michael Shea's autopsy, I would love, because when they just announced who was doing the writing, they didn't say which stories. And I saw Shea and I was just like, please be fat face, please be fat face, please be fat face.
yes.
Oh, it's just, yeah, it's so good. I mean, just love to see that. Another one I'd love to see actually is Hounds of Tindalos. I
Oh,
think I think they could do a good version of that with modern effects.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I
I
think
think
that
as well, Fat Face wouldn't take much adapting, would it? Because it's got
no,
a. I think, as we said before, some of these stories can be a little bit difficult because there's not
mm,
much that actually happens, and they're often recounted. You know, the diary or the letter, or I
yeah,
heard of a guy who told me this. But Fat Face is like. Um, it could almost be like a sort of detective noir story, couldn't it? If you took out the
yeah,
Shoggoth and made him a serial killer, then it would fit exactly into that, wouldn't it?
yeah. Well, Shea, I mean, is quite a visual writer. I find um, more so than people like Lovecraft. It is almost filmic the way it is written, isn't it? I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot of action in Shea, which lends itself perfectly to adaptations. Um,
yeah, yeah.
because you need it to crack along, don't you? Especially in the modern day where everybody's got the attention span of a gnat. You know,
Well, yeah, yeah, and it's got to you've got to have those beats, haven't you? You know, every sort of 3 minutes, something has
that's
got to be,
yeah,
or there's got to
beats.
be, or there's got to be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So it is a bit difficult, but I do think
mm,
that is one that will work really well. And I think that remains for me the most horrible mythos story. I mean, horrible in the best sense of the word. That is all throughout you, like, and then the ending, you sort of, oh, that's really,
that's
that's
just Shay all over. It's so
yeah,
grim.
yeah, yeah, and yet entertaining.
Oh yeah, he has such a way of just. It's just filthy. It makes you feel a bit grimy when you've read it. You know, it's like a lot of most of his mythos stories are the same. Like Copping Squid is another one,
Yeah,
and Mr. Cannyharm and all this because they're all in the same area. I mean, that's kind of his milieu, isn't it? That low rent dives and prostitutes and pimps and pushers and
yes, yeah,
uh,
yeah. Yeah, I think it'd be a very easy author to adapt. I think the Hound's Tindlos would be an interesting one. I think if they were going for Lovecraft, given that what they do is sort of 45, 50 minutes,
yeah,
I think The Shadow over Innsmouth needs a film probably
yeah.
to do it justice. Um, I don't know. From Beyond has kind of been done, hasn't it? I don't think they could do the Call of Cthulhu properly in that time.
Mm.
I'm struggling to think of a Lovecraft. Maybe the Dunwich Horror. That might work.
There's
Or
actually a really good sort of. It's only about an hour, and it's really low budget version of Haunter of the Dark called Pickman's Muse.
right, yeah, yeah,
I'd like to see a big budget version of that because it's got all the beats and everything there. It's great, but it
yeah,
kind of mixes in some elements of Pickman's model.
yeah,
But I thought that was really well done, so I'd like to see something like that. I think Haunter of the Dark could work.
yeah. See, I think Pickman's model was not a good choice because it's a very short
No,
story, and there's not much happens in it. You know, and again, I think when we had Robert Lloyd Parry on, we were talking about this with him, weren't we? Can you really think of a still image, a picture that horrifies you to the extent that you go a bit mad?
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of got around that in the adaptation with having everything going a bit swirly-whirly, didn't they? But it's just a painting of a monster, you know. It doesn't really.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one, I think.
What I would like if they did that was them to actually keep to the source material, because Dreams of the Witch House had absolutely nothing to do with the story.
Awful, wasn't it? Awful.
It wasn't good,
but it looked good, you know.
It looked
I mean,
great.
they all, and that's the frustrating thing. They've got the
Mm.
technology and the budget and everything else to do a good job with it. You know, it's not cardboard scenery and a bloke in a rubber mask. It makes it even more disappointing, doesn't it? Really, I'd rather have a bloke in a rubber mask, I think. Than,
same.
You know.
But I thought they did a good job with Graveyard Rats.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah, that was good. So John Harvey has said, this is good. The Barrow Wight in Fellowship meets Randolph's Round, meets Randall's Round, meets the statement of Randolph Carter. Wow. That's that's a good mashup, isn't it?
That is a good one. I like
Barrow Wight, Randall's Round, and Randolph Carter. So that'd be Randolph Carter investigating the Barrow in what was the Randall in the name in the village, outside the village, and it turns out to be a Barrow Wight. I like that, John.
I like that. Yeah, nice one. Yeah. Yeah, Randolph Carter sneaking up the road to try and get in the barrow, you know, with his purloined shovel. He spent a lot of time nicking the shovel, didn't he?
Yeah. Actually, I'll give a shout out to the podcast To the Curious, who have covered all the M.R. James stories, and now they're moving on to M.R. James contemporaries. Their current season, they're doing women writers of similar time, and they just covered Randall's Round as well.
Did they really? Excellent.
Yeah, so I just listened to that. It was they came up with a lot of the same sort of things as we did, and a lot of the same questions and observations, but obviously they had some other ones as well. So yeah, well worth a listen. And they agreed as well that this, as far as they know, was the first folk horror story. Yeah. You know, or certainly as far as we know.
I imagine if they're doing that series on contemporary women, I imagine they're doing Man-Sized in Marble.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I love that. So we should do that at some point, because I love that story.
Yes.
It's really, really creepy story.
It is. It is. And I say that seems to be the golden age of the English ghost story. That sort of Victorian into Edwardian. Maybe it's something to do with gas lights and fog, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's evocative, isn't it? You know, I mean, I like doing it. I mean, I like setting things in Victorian London, because you just bring up like Jack the Ripper and Spring-Heeled Jack and all it, you know, the Ratcliffe Highway murders, and it's just really evocative, isn't it? You know, it's all top hats and capes and.
So actually, that can lead us on to something, because obviously, when we do the podcast, we're talking about other people's work a lot, and we both write as well, short stories and novellas and that kind of thing. So when you're writing, where do you get your main ideas from? How do you find your thoughts or stories develop?
A lot of my ideas, again, I follow the Lovecraft thing. A lot of my ideas start off in dreams. A lot of my really strange ideas, and also just observing. I'm one of them people that when I'm out, I'm constantly watching, and my brain, because of the way it's wired, I often think, well, what if that turned murderous? Or I think it's been raised on like 60s and 70s Doctor Who. You know what I mean? It's just like, what if that daffodil tried to suffocate people? You know.
My brother was terrified of that episode.
Yeah.
That must have been, when was it? Early 70s?
73?
Yeah, so
Terror of the Autons, but 73, 72, 73.
So he would have been about 6 or 7. I was a couple of years older. So I used to chase him around the garden with the daffodil, because my dad used to grow them, right? So I'd pick one and chase him. That's the sort of big brother I was.
That's brilliant, mate.
But yeah, I'm similar to that myself as far as observation goes, and I think it's just having that little sideways view of the world sometimes, because I think you see a situation and you think, oh, but what if that was a trans-dimensional something or other?
Shock off.
And yeah. Or what I sometimes do is think of a character first, almost, and then think, So what would happen if that person was in that situation? You know.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like doing, which is something I've got planned for next year, is taking something like, well, I did it with the Rats in the Walls and did a prequel to Rats in the Walls, because you think often with the Weird Tales, as we've said quite often, you get this little isolated incident. Well, Randall's Round is a perfect example. He goes to the village, he has this experience, and it ends by him just walking out of the field. And I'm thinking, but what? And then, and if, and what? So that's my writer's brain, you know. So we covered Worms of the Earth a little while back on the book club, which I think is both is one of our favourite Robert E. Howard stories.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
that got my wheels turning, and now I'm thinking next year I'm going to start on a new series of novellas, and it will be a Roman sent to Britain to investigate the disappearance of, was it Titus Sulla, I think?
Yeah.
Because obviously he just vanishes off the face, well, into the into the face of the earth.
Yeah.
So someone will be sent to investigate that, and that will set up a kind of a series of Lovecraftian, Howardian, Dark Ages.
Nice. You could go a bit Richard Tierney with that as well, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
With all his, we should cover that as well at some point. His Simon of Gitta stuff.
Yes, so, I've been reading
really
those lately. Yeah. And then something else we were talking about was names as well, isn't it?
we came onto it because this is probably going to come as no shock to a lot of viewers. I spend a lot of time lurking around graveyards. I like graveyard. I like church architecture and stuff, right?
That's his story. Into it.
Yeah. But I've started doing the M.R. James thing of jotting down names off tombstones. I've got a little Moleskine notebook that I keep in my pocket, and I write down that's a good one, you know. Maud Boggins, you know.
Brilliant. And I was saying my version of that is we sit here and read through film credits, or when a program ends and the credits come up and we shout, oh, that's an interesting name. That's an interesting name. So that's one way. And I don't know about you, but I find getting a name can be the most difficult part, or sometimes quite a long process.
Doggerland.
It's got to feel right, isn't it?
I had such trouble with bloody names for that I ended up nicking some from the first ever Doctor Who serial because it was set in the Stone Age. So I ended up nicking a couple of names from that. Made up some Celtic sounding names and hope for the best.
I've not read your stuff. I'm just waiting for the book to come through. It should be coming through tomorrow, actually. So it's, I didn't realise there were so many stories in it. It's
quite a mighty tome.
400 something pages, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. But I think and especially when you're writing fantasy stuff, or my Sword and Sorcery series, at least. I mean, it's sort of it's pseudo Hyborian age. So you've got your Egyptian civilization and you've got your Greek. So you want names that sound like that, but like Robert E. Howard did, but not exact copies necessarily.
It's like you can't just go Dave or something, can you?
Dave the Barbarian. And actually, I knew a Dave the Barbarian once.
Did you? Yeah. I know a Steve the Viking.
Oh, Steve the Viking, right? Yeah, so it is a bit of a struggle getting names. But then the other nice thing you can do, I mean, not just character names, but place names, cities, gods, all that kind of stuff. That's where you can start putting in your Easter eggs, right? So I've used, I've looked at the translator and I've got what's the Russian for deep one or something like that, and that's what you call your monsters, Yeah.
It's like I've got a character Dana Sumpf, because obviously Dana means from the sea. And Sumpf is German for marsh.
Oh, that's good.
For a deep one.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice. Yeah. See, and some people will kind of not see that, but people like us will, because we're the sort of people who.
Yeah, well, all my stories, especially my Hollow Hills cycle, all the names are important. Because, like the first one, Burning Reflection, you've got Aiden, which means little flame. And
Ah.
so they're all names linked because obviously it's spoiler alert. There's a certain fiery entity in that one.
Yes, there is. Yes.
It's a creation of Mr. Yeah, a creation of Mr. Derleth of all people. Yeah.
So, we've up to 57 episodes on IBC now, and of course we've had Strange Shadows launched this year. I was trying to look earlier when we started IBC. I know we had our birthday party, didn't we, a few months back. I'm terrible with time, and the events of the past few years have just totally wrecked my mind calendar.
I was talking to somebody earlier, doing an interview with somebody earlier for the radio thing. It was a band, and he was convinced it was still like 2020 the other day because he's like this lost years.
It is strange, isn't it? It's like we all shut down for a year or two. Yeah, but we have been going. I think we're getting on for 2 years, 57 episodes, and of course, Strange Shadows we started this year, which is absolutely going great guns. We got up to 500 listens. That's very amazing. Quickly, and we're up to 1,000 now, over 1,000. So that's been very encouraging. I think largely because there's no other Clark Ashton Smith podcast.
Well, that's the thing. There is a lot of Lovecraft ones, isn't there?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Tolkien ones, and there's a lot of this and that and the other. But there was a gap in the market, and that was your whole thing, wasn't it? It was just like,
yeah. I see the gap, I go for it. I see the hole, I fill
it. But I'm really enjoying Strange Shadows. I mean, I really enjoy IBC as well, but I really enjoyed just going through in order. It's really interesting seeing his work evolve.
Yeah,
from sort of like the early prose poems into these sprawling epics and things. It's really interesting to see how his craft developed.
Yeah, it gives us a chance to dig in a little deeper as well, doesn't it? I mean, because the issue we always have is time, of course, and we could spend 3 hours on a single story, really, from any of these authors.
Well, we have, haven't we?
I mean, at times, unfortunately, we've had to edit stuff down.
I seem to remember the Great God Pan going on for about 2 or 3 hours.
Yes,
you had to get the shears out.
Yeah, that was a long one. Yeah,
so it was one of those. It's not actually that long. I mean, it's only a novella, but once you start going into the themes and everything, it's just
And it always interests me. Well, even MRJ, he is obviously a very scholarly chap, but there seems to be a resistance to all these things being classed as literature. I mean, historically, maybe nowadays not so much, but as we say with Lovecraft and Howard and Smith, pulp, read on the train to work, read in your lunch hour, and then chucked in the bin on the way home. Disposable kind of fiction, really, a quick thrill, and yet, as we know from when we examine it, so much depth and so many little tangents we can go off.
Yeah. It's interesting what you say that, because that brings to mind what we discovered about the Damned thing, wasn't it? That it was in basically a scandal rag.
Yeah, wasn't it? Who's doing what to who?
yeah. But then again, like we mentioned there, I mean, Stephen King made his living with stories to Playboy when he didn't have any cash.
Yeah, quite true. Yeah. Oh, Russ Smeaton has just signed in. Hi, Russ. Evening.
Hello, mate.
How you doing? Russ was one of our first guests. I think Russ and Glino and Barris were certainly our first couple of guests all those months ago. Let us know what you're up to, Russ, at the moment. Russ he's written a huge amount of short stories, and I believe he's got some art projects going on as well at the moment. So perhaps you can let us know about those, Russ. And Dawn says, I learned recently that the name now, IOAN, so Ian. The name means gift from God.
Yes.
The name was in a book. The name was in a book of character, and it was so unusual I had to Google it. Yeah, I've certainly seen sort
I've
of.
seen that before.
Yeah. But I didn't know that meant gift from God. That's interesting.
There's another one that means very similar. I can't remember what it is now because it's one of the ones that I nearly used in one of my Hollow Hills novellas, but I thought it was too biblical and not Lovecraftian enough. You see, yeah.
That's something again we found with Smith. He liked his names like Theophilus, didn't he? And none of his characters are called, Brian
Bill.
the poet, are they? Or
Brian, yeah.
John the author, or something like that. Yeah.
I'm sure Smith does do. It's one of them things. Do you think he was seeing into the future and thinking someday somebody's got to try and read out this, so I'm going to have some fun with this now? Pronounce that, you buggers.
Yes, I think consistently across the Smith stories, we struggle the most with those, don't we? I actually find
you had me trying to read out the other week.
Maybe it's just that we're used to Hagen kind of stuff. We're kind of used to that. It's but I find Lovecraft is not so difficult. I mean, you get Cyclopean and Eidolons and various things like that.
I had trouble when I did the reading of the festival, which will be going up. For Christmas.
Yes. Yeah.
When I did the reading of that, I had difficulty, but it was all the tomes and books and things because it was it was like I haven't put my teeth in, I was just like
when it's cold as well, your face is not quite so responsive, is it? I had that.
Yeah.
I was doing some videoing outside the other day. Honestly, it was about 8 takes just to say hello. Today we're going to. I had to slap myself around the face a few times.
Oh, no.
All right. So Russ, wow. Russ is being a busy boy at the moment. So Russ says, I'm running a Patreon, and those that joined have all received a paperback of all the stories released via the Patreon. Not all Lovecraft related, but quite a few that might be of interest. And is also putting together a quarterly chapbook thingy featuring flash fiction. So I need my teeth in for that one.
Featuring flash fiction.
Each story is 500 words. Again, not all Lovecraftian horror, but definitely weird. And my project for 2023 is an Innsmouth Miriorama. I'm not familiar with that word.
No.
An Innsmouth Miriorama card game. But this has been a project for 2 years, so I might not happen. Well, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can't pronounce any of the Lovecraft words either. But you made me try and pronounce Miriorama.
Yeah, right.
Nice one. Thanks for that, Russ. We'll get some links up to you, and we'll get you on the show again next year. So, as you're not been to Innsmouth for a while, so we'll drag you back in because you can never leave fully.
It's interesting because I did a lot of live readings during lockdown as a way of getting some kind of promotion. I completely tripped myself up with words because I'd done, especially a lot of my early stuff, I was kind of channeling Lovecraft with all the, the relaying. So there was lots of Fatagan, and I'm trying to read that out in the dark.
You made a rod for your own back.
Oh man, I made such a fool out of myself. Going,
couple of shots of vodka beforehand is my advice,
yeah,
or gin. Should I say gin?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Russ has said, I'm not going to try and say the word again, but basically it's a set of 10 cards that all sit together.
Okay.
And he always says, just don't ask me to pronounce anything. Well, we're going to now.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I'm going to go through our Smith episodes and find some of the really juicy words that we've used in the past.
Fulgurant. That was
Fulgurant. Didn't you put that in a dedication to me on that Innsmouth essays? Your fulgurance.
Fulgurance. Absolutely.
Yeah, you need to keep an eye out on that in Shadow over Doggerland, because Rob and I have been trying to outdo each other with Smithian words.
Yeah, I definitely got Violescence in there. I'm trying to think what else.
You did. Yeah.
Crepuscular is another one I'm looking to fit into something at the moment. I'm doing in my latest Wolf book it's the most Lovecraftian, and there's a sort of Innsmouthian place that he goes to. So a lot of hiding in the shadows, and yeah, I'm trying to work Crepuscular in and a few other things.
I managed to get, you'll be proud of me. Actually, I've already shown you, but in the story I wrote that will be coming out in an anthology next year, it's Victorian, one of my Victorian things, and I managed to get pecuniary depletion in there.
Oh,
so there you go, Gavin Chappell. Yeah,
Gavin,
there you go, mate.
That's you, Gavin. I think that's my favourite phrase ever so far out of anything.
In a state of pecuniary depletion.
Yes. Speaking of words, now, God. If you listened at all to anything we've ever done, particularly Strange Shadows, you know that we have all these lofty themes and things of a cosmic nature, and Tim and I always manage to drag it back down to the gutter, because that's where our hearts reside, in the gutter. So this is something my wife just showed me on a little clip on the phone just before I came on, and it's just cracked me up so much I'm still laughing about it. It's a lady has got a garage. You know, sometimes like where you live in flats, you've got garages down the bottom, perhaps, right? Yeah. So on her garage doors, she's got magnetic letters. Merry Christmas and some little holly and all that sort of stuff. Magnetic letters, right? So the local kids have obviously seen this, and they've rearranged the letters. And it now says creamy shits. Oh dear.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Faulty Towers. The beginning of Faulty Towers, because every episode they'd have rearranged the sign, aren't they? So it was flowery twats.
Flowery twats, yeah. Farty towels, wasn't it?
Flay otters.
And there's a little video clip of this poor lady sort of standing there looking at creamy shit. So well done, lads. That gets a thumbs up.
Bravo. Yeah.
Bravo. Yeah. Oh, look, Russ has given me another word here to pronounce. Do you want to have a go with that one?
Well, batrachian.
Yeah. No. It's batrak. It is, but yeah,
batrachian. Yeah, it means toad-like. I've got that in loads of my stories.
Yeah, there you go.
Because I've done quite a few Sarcophagus stories, you see. So
that was easy, Russ. We want more of a challenge than that. There's another challenge to our listeners. Send us the most unpronounceable word you can find.
Oh, God,
we'll see what we can do.
Damn it. Sorry, Russ. Oh, that's brilliant.
So, I think then, just to finish off, we've got a few people we want to thank.
Indeed.
And also there's some other podcasts I wanted to mention as well. And again, we'll put links up to these in the show notes, or that they'll be in the recent show notes anyway. I particularly want to say thanks to the guys at the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, because they've really been pushing the Innsmouth Book Club. They give it a little plug every show. So big thanks for that, guys. We really appreciate it. And I think we've both guested on there as well.
Yeah, we've both been on there. I was on an episode talking about old Nyarlathotep.
Yes.
So they're talking about pronunciations. Most of that was trying to figure out how to pronounce the damn thing. So there you go.
And we also want to give out a shout out to Jim and James at the Cast of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
Who, again, we've been on their show and they've guested for us a couple of times. That's a great one for looking at Lovecraftian movie adaptations. And they dig into some well-known things, but also some really obscure stuff. Well, I see Dawn has risen to the challenge.
Oh, no.
Okay, so anti-Disasterianism.
Anti-Disasterianism. Oh,
Anti-Disasterianism. Wow.
Nice, Brian. Well done.
That's good. Yeah, nice one, Dawn.
I like that.
Thank you. Yep. We shall see if one of us can get that into a story next year, perhaps.
Oh, God.
It's going down in the book. So, yeah, and also Jeff and Hoy at the Appendix N Book Club, we want to give a shout out to. They're looking at all the Dungeons and Dragons, or the authors that influenced D&D from the Appendix N in Gary Gygax's book. And they're kind of branching out into a lot of other fiction as well. Now they covered House on the Borderland not so long ago. So
Nice.
they look at things from a gaming perspective, but they delve into a lot of interesting themes.
I'm actually reading that again at the minute as we
All right.
speak. I'm actually reading the House of the
Yeah.
Borderland again. I started it the other night. I just thought I haven't read that in years. I'm going to have another crack.
Yeah.
Good
You know,
story.
something else. Have you ever read The Nightland?
Yeah,
You got all the way through it.
I'm not sure.
I didn't. It just came up on one of the groups, and people said, you know, someone said if you persevere with it, there's some really great bits in there to like later on. But you have to get through a lot of treacle.
Hodgson's definitely one of them that it's his shorter work is his best stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
things like A Voice in the Night, and obviously his Kaimaki stuff. You know, it's definitely his best work, I think.
All the seafaring tales are
Yeah, the
ghost
Sargasso
pirates and
Sea
all
stuff.
that. Yeah.
I mean, there's that one. I can't remember the name of it, but it's basically it opens with a ship being attacked by a kraken, and that's the whole story. It's just this ship being ripped to crap by a kraken. It's absolutely marvelous.
The creature in the weeds or something like
That's
that. It's called,
it's the creature in the weeds. That's the one.
Yeah. Actually, I know that because they covered that recently on another podcast, which I don't have the name to hand. I'm going to mention it on Strange Shadows because they also recently covered Planet of the Dead. So they're doing some Smith stuff as well. And what I really like, they came up with a lot of the same ideas that we did, but also some different perspectives as well. But they also did the band name thing, which really made me laugh because I thought that was just us.
It's not just us. Yeah. Did they get loads of dodgy innuendo in there though? That's the question.
They didn't cover innuendo so much, but then they're probably not grown up on Carry On films.
No, exactly. Yeah, raised on Carry On movies. Yeah.
And of course, we'd like to shout out to the HB Podcraft guys, Strange Studies of Strange Stories, as they're called now. Again, now they've done Lovecraft and a lot of Lovecraft-related stuff. They're branching out into all types of weird fiction and sci-fi. Always a great show. And of course, Chris Lackey was a guest on the IBC a couple of months back as well. And lastly, I'd like to mention the good friends of Jackson Elias, which is a Call of Cthulhu gaming podcast. But again, they cover a lot of different aspects of Lovecraft and weird fiction. And recently, they did a special on Smith's gods, particularly Sarthogia, Atlaknacha, and so on.
Nice.
Really great show. And they very kindly shared the link to Strange Shadows for us as well, because I mentioned, we're covering all the Smith stories. So they put the link up on it. So thanks for that, guys. And hopefully we'll look at getting one of those guys on next year for a chat. I think they've got a lot of good knowledge.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
And,
cool, yeah. So basically, should we thank the guests, I guess?
Yeah.
So thanks to all the guests who've been on the show. So thanks to Lee Tabram, David Hambling, Chris Lackey, Gavin Chappell, Jeff Goad, Chris Macaulay, Matthew Davenport, Ben Crawford, Jim Rona, and James McCormick.
Yes, thank you one and all. We've got some interesting guests lined up already for next year. We've got CT Phipps is going to be coming on, and Greg Johnson we're speaking to as well, who did those great short Lovecraft adaptations with Chris Lackey, the Pickman's model. Absolutely hilarious. Yeah, really good. So looking forward to chatting to both of those.
Yeah. I think we're going to have Jonathan Inbody on as well from the Grey Matter podcast.
Oh, yes. So aside from that, obviously Smith, we're nearly at the end of volume 1 now, so we'll be going on to the second season of that. I mean, the next batch of stories. And as far as the IBC goes, it'll be the usual mix of films and books. If you do have any suggestions, then, do let us know. Always good to discover new authors and new stories. With certainly some of the things we covered this year, I wasn't aware of before. So, it's been really, really pleased to find those stories.
Yeah, I really enjoy that, pulling out some forgotten tome and inflicting it on Rob. Here's some obscure random weirdness for you.
I'm going to start retaliating. I've got a few things,
Nice.
a few things lined up. Yeah, C.L. Moore. I want to do there's a Giro Odwari story. There's one that everyone does, but there's a couple of other more or less well-known ones.
Speaking of C.L. Moore, we should definitely do the Challenge from Beyond.
Yes,
the round robin.
Yeah, someone mentioned that recently. I'm sorry, I've forgotten who it was.
I think it was Ralph Grasso. I think it was Ralph on the on the Clarkosh Ton Facebook page.
Right. Yeah, good suggestion, Ralph. We'll take that up. Yeah. And also, we want to thank our readers for Strange Shadows. That's Robert Lee Parry, Shelley De Cruz, and Kate Tate. Thanks very much for your readings. And of course, that is something we'll be continuing next year or in the second season as well.
Marvelous.
So I think that about wraps it up. The temperature's still dropping here, so I think we both want to get
fire somewhere.
I'm just hoping the bus starts in this cold weather.
Yeah. Steal a bottle of meths off Zadok Allen to warm me up, I think.
Yeah, because my bike has been locked in the shed, so I might have to nick a shovel to see if I can. Yeah. I wonder, is there a word? Now, here's another little challenge for our listeners. If you were in Innsmouth and all you had was a shovel and you hit a deep one around the head with it, what noise would it make? There we go. Because the traditional noise would be like pang, right? P3AZNG. Yeah. So there we go.
But is it on their heads kind of pulpy?
Oh, yeah. So would it thwang or would it sort of thwomp?
Thwop. Yeah. Slip.
We've got a last question. This is out of it is random. Oh, twunk. Dawn says. Yes, I like that. TWNCK. That's a good one, Dawn. And Dawn also asks, do you know any funny limericks? Just a random question. Wow, funny limericks.
Oh, off the top of my head, blimey.
I can't think of any Lovecraftian ones, but I've got a favourite. There was a young man called Perkins who couldn't stop eating gherkins. One day at tea, he ate 63 and pickled his internal workings. Well, there you go.
Nice.
That's not bad, is it?
Oh, what's that one from Carry On at Your Convenience? Oh, Drunk Kenneth Williams. I can't remember what it was now. But
I can't have to look that up. I
can't think of any lyrics off the top of my head. I could give you a few bars of Rambling Sid Rumpo.
The only other one I can think of is not fit for human consumption.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Most of mine is absolute filth. So
yeah, I mean they are sort of New Englandy in a way in that they involve Nantucket, but
yes,
perhaps we better stop there. Oh, what's this from Russ? There was a young lad from Grass whose balls were made out of brass. In stormy weather, they clanked together and sparks came out of his arse. Very good. Well done, sir. Well done. All right. Well, I think on that note, before we get shut down,
before the YouTube moderator police come after me.
The Innsmouth fun police. You're not allowed to have fun in Innsmouth. They're a bit funny about that.
It's the Marsh family again, isn't it?
Yes, that's that's what happens when the town is run by a sort of religious group. There's a lot
what could possibly go wrong?
Okay, so thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks, Russ. Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, John, for joining us and asking those questions. And thanks to everyone who's supported the show through listening or through signing up for Patreon. We've got some patron specials coming up, of course, as well. We appreciate all of your support.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, with that, happy festival, everyone. And we'll see you next year. It's goodbye from me, Rob Hoyton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes. Turn it off. Turn it off.
That's what happens when you put a werewolf glove on.